Clicker's over there. Fantastic, great. Then welcome everybody in the room, in the pavilion. Welcome everybody joining us on Zoom to this session in the Conservation Finance Pavilion on the Nature Accelerator, and especially looking at impact metrics in this session. So my name is Christina Mellon. I'm with South Pole. I work in our agricultural value chains team. And since 2019, South Pole is also the platform coordinator for CPIC, the Coalition of Private Investment and Conservation. You'll hear a little more about it in a moment. But give me a second to introduce our fabulous speakers. Elmedina Krilashevic is the Senior Program Coordinator for IUCN in the working on nature-based finance. Edith Kish is the Investment and Development Director for Mirova Natural Capital. And Adeline Serx is a Senior Principal Consultant at the Biodiversity Consultancy. In this session, we do want to leave room for questions. And I know here in the room that might be a little bit more towards the end. We'll also try taking questions from those joining on Zoom online. And with this brief introduction, Elmedina, do you want to get us started?
Yes, thank you, Christina. And starting with sort of adding addition to the introduction as well, I have an opportunity to introduce the topic to you, and specifically to introduce the Conservation Finance Initiative. So this is a project that we have started in 2019 with the support from Jeff as one of the donors and investors in this project, in collaboration with the CPIC, with the Coalition of Private Investment in Conservation, in order to put together this truly innovative, what we believe to be very innovative fund that is targeting the current gap of lack of investable project deals in the conservation space and focusing on nature-based solutions. So in that context, I would like to say that in terms of where we are right now is that the Nature Accelerator Fund has had a soft launch in November 2020, and it was launched by IUCN, by Mirova, Jeff, and CPIC, and we expect to have a first close of the fund in the last quarter of this year. So today we're going to give you some overview of the main features of the fund, and we're going to also give you a very short introduction into the impact framework for the fund that we have been working on together with our partners and with the CPIC community. And then we are also, we'll have a chance to highlight some of the tools that is going to be very fundamental for tracking the impact on biodiversity and special species biodiversity. So I'm going to stop here and introduce my colleague Edith, who is going to give you an introduction to the fund itself. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Medina. I hope you can hear me. It's okay, perfect. So we have already seen the main partners of the fund, IUCN and Jeff, and the CPIC platform and its members. So I would like to spend a bit of time to explain a bit the structure and the investment approach of the fund before we will dive into the metrics and the impact framework. Just a very quick word on Mirova and Mirova's Natural Capital platforms. It's a leading impact investment asset manager, and we have been active on the natural capital market since 2012. And basically, as Elmedina explained, after a collaboration, we have been working together now for a year to structure an innovative solution to address the missing funding gap, and especially one of the main barriers, as we have also seen in the latest report from CPIC, the lack of investable pipelines in the conservation finance markets. Just a quick overview about the fund. It's targeting a $50 million size, so relatively small. However, the objective is to generate a relatively large pipeline, up to 70 projects that will go through an acceleration, several phases of acceleration, which I will explain a bit in more details. We already have $8 million junior tranche committed by the Jeff. And we're looking for securing some additional junior capital that will then unlock the senior tranche up to the 50 million ticket size. The target is developing countries globally. There might be some geographic focus, and it's likely that we will start initially on Africa, but it will also depend still on the investor preferences. Just a quick overview of why we think this is actually interesting for investors. We believe that the fund is quite well positioned to address, again, one of the biggest challenges. It will provide access to a growing pipeline of transactions. It will also aim to tap into a growing environmental markets beyond carbon. So that's hopefully also something that we will see growing exponentially in the next decade. And it's also based on a public-private partnership. So we believe that the support of IUCN and also the broader CPIC network, the technical expertise, and the public de-risking capital will bring an interesting opportunity to the financial sectors to engage with. I think I can probably go to the investment approach to explain a bit how we designed an investment fund, which is a traditional investment fund of a 10-year closed-ended vehicle. However, unlike other funds, has a little bit of a different structure where we designed 3 complementary windows, starting with a seed window, where we will be able to provide a small ticket size of $100,000 to $200,000 in a relatively simplified manner. One of the challenges of today is that there are many projects that are not able to tap into impact or even traditional investment sources because of their small ticket size. And we believe that with a small ticket size, they can be actually accelerated and grown into the size that where they can unlock the capital. The other issue is the speed. Often these projects don't have the capacity to work for a 6 months, 12 months due diligence process to unlock the capital. And we also know that we don't have time to lose. So we will simplify also on our side the investment process and make it a bit more accessible to the projects. However, just to clarify, this is not a grant window. As a traditional, we have seen a lot of TA facilities or other incubators with grant financing. The idea is also to bring the investment approach early on and prepare the projects to what the investors will be looking for. So bringing the investment approach a bit more early stage. With an expect of the potentially 50 projects for a 15 so a subset of it to be successful and to be then eligible to receive a larger ticket size of $1 to $2 million, which we call early venture, and which will be a bit more closer to what typically our other funds are already doing. Still a bit a bit earlier stage than again the traditional funds on the market are able to do. And finally, out of this pool, about 4 or 5 projects will be able to get the full ticket size up to $4 or $5 million. But we also expect that this whole process will generate overall this 50 million fund will generate overall another 150 million worth of transactions and ticket size deals, which either the investors can of the fund have access to, or the broader market can take up. So the idea of the fund is really to bring the investment approach in a streamlined manner, both in speed and the implementation. Besides the financial support, we also, I think, have experienced in our past 8-10 years of work that besides the monetary, early stage funding, the in-kind support and the co-structuring, co-building process is also key. So we will be, besides, actually we'll have also a technical assistance facility run by IUCN, but we also aim to make this fund able to work with the projects and provide for at least the first 12 months a more hands-in-hands working together to prepare them to prepare, for example, their business plan, to prepare to access the financial transactions. And so if anybody is interested, that's the easiest way to get engaged already and participate in some of the trainings and works there. In terms of the scope, it's also quite interesting, or hopefully novel, in the sense that there are traditionally funds structured around thematic areas. And here, because the idea is to push the whole market, is looking across the different sectors. So we have 4 pillars, starting from the terrestrial side, which is more typically the conservation, activities and restoration. When it comes to restoration, the focus is very much in natural regeneration, natural ecosystem-based approach, and not plantations, for example, native species, and a very high focus on biodiversity, as we will discuss in the impact section. On the marine side, typically looking at, again, new emerging environmental assets. So blue carbon is a very emerging and fast growing area, plastic credits, and coral reef restoration and other environmental attributes around the blue economy we will be looking at. Sustainable agriculture, typically agroforestry, multiple revenue stream landscape approach, and we will also look at areas like soil carbon, which includes some new methodologies like biochar, etc. And we also wanted to have a pillar reserved for technology-based solutions, which we think are very catalytic for accelerating also the development of the market. Which is traditionally also difficult for some of the funds that need to focus on a project. So we'll have a small pocket reserved also for some interesting technological solutions. And finally, just you might wonder, Nature Plus is one of the many solutions in the market. We really have worked the past 12 months to also map the current competitive landscape. And the aim is really in the spirit of collaboration, bridging the current gap and not to compete. I think, although we need a lot of competition to solve the challenge ahead of us, but the idea is that we will be plugging into an existing gap between the current more like donor and NGO driven accelerators and incubators, which are on the left-hand side, and more on the right-hand side, the financial initiatives, or like the more traditional vehicles to help the projects to progress very fast on the chart from the left to the right. And with that, I'll pass it back to Almedina to walk us through where we have landed with the impact framework.
Yes, thank you so much, Edith. I think I'm going to stay here, and yes, thank you. All right, so again, just to go back to the beginning in terms of how we developed the impact framework. So obviously, for a fund of this kind, sort of the innovative fund that is supported by one of the largest global environmental fund, which is Jeff, we needed to make sure that we also do have a very strong impact. And in this context, also having Jeff as an anchor investor, and the funding coming from the two focal areas, which is biodiversity and land degradation, this was our starting point in order to make sure that the fund is actually going to have positive and tangible benefits to biodiversity, and also benefits to stopping land degradation, while taking into account also other co-benefits in terms of climate change, in terms of economic development, and so forth. So in that context, we have come up with the 5 focal areas, or like 5 KPIs that you can see on the screen here. So in that context, as I mentioned, we do have KPIs that are related to ecosystems and biodiversity, KPIs related to climate change mitigation. Also, we're climate change adaptation, sustainable landscape management, and sustainable community development. And it's important to say that it's important to have a framework, but also we have went through a large process of consultations as well to make sure that this framework is credible and robust, and that it's relevant for the fund. In terms of how it measures credible impact, but also how it relates to the needs of the project developers. So in that context, we went through a period of consultations, first within the CPIC network, with the CPIC members and potential project developers. And then based on that, we were able to harness the expertise also of the wider IUCN community in terms of our experts and our internal capacity to validate additionally the metrics, and find, I would say, sort of like the best solution and menu of options that we will be able to use future for the fund. So in that context, then again, this is a very detailed description of the KPIs that we have defined together. I'm not going to be able to go into all the details today because we have a very limited amount of time. But these slides are also going to be available later on, and you can use this as a resource material. But I will say that under the impact area 1, which is ecosystems and biodiversity, We are going to be using metrics that is focused on land under improved management for conservation of biodiversity. It is going to be expressed in hectares as a unit of measure. Then also for the KPI KPI under is land under restoration for conservation of biodiversity, also expressed in hectares. And what we're really excited about is also being able to use the STAR metrics. And I'm sure you probably, some of you already had a chance to hear about it. And it was during the past sessions in order to be able to look at the species biodiversity. And we're going to have a little highlight, I would say, sort of in terms of explaining what the STAR is and how is it being used after this. Then in terms of the climate change mitigation, so we're going to obviously we're going to be using greenhouse gas emissions mitigated as a metrics for the project outcome. And in that sense, we're going to be using tons of carbon dioxide removed. And so this is more, I think, straightforward than, you have had many chance to hear about the methodologies behind that. And in terms of the climate change adaptation, we're going to be looking at number of people who have benefited from climate change adaptation activities. Then again, just to mention, this is very high level. There is a suite of options in terms of indicators and tools that are going to be able to serve this impact framework going in the future. Then on for the sustainable landscape management, the KPI is sustainable management and land use of land, also expressed in hectares, as well as area of land under restoration for production, sustainably managed seascapes and sea resources, and sustainable management and use of coastal areas. Obviously, a lot of it is sort of packed under these KPIs, the titles for the KPIs. And last but not the least, for sustainable development, we're going to be focusing on tracking and about the number of people experiencing socioeconomic benefits from the activities. So what's also important to say that these KPIs are meant to showcase the positive impact. So it's the plus side of the investment from this fund. While there is going to be a robust system, the environmental and social risk management system in place to make sure that we minimize any potential adverse impacts, we are also going a step further in making sure that we are creating tangible impacts from this project pipeline. That is going to be helpful for the fund, but also we're expecting that there's going to be a lot of learning for the market and for the community in the future in terms of how these impacts can be measured. In terms of, maybe I'm just going to use the opportunity as well, just to briefly also mention the IUCN NBS standard. So that's another framework that is going to be able to capture some of the complexities around NBS, the potential of NBS, and being able to also talk about how we address societal challenges in terms of climate change, economic and social development, human health, and so forth. The fund is also going to be using this framework that is potentially also going to is going to grow into a certification scheme as well as such. This is just to showcase some of the numbers, some of the global numbers in terms of the potential benefits from nature-based solutions. The definition for nature-based solutions is the one that's developed by IUCN, and you can see it here. And now looking into, I'm just going to go quickly through this as well, like what the NBS standard is. So it consists of 8 criteria and 28 indicators. It is based on knowledge creation, and it's based on conservation co-creation, conservation science and social science and traditional knowledge. And it's also crowdsourced, which means that it had gone through a significant development process through open consultations where more than 800 people, experts across 100 countries have been able to contribute to the standard the way it is right now. And you can find the NBS standard online on the IUCN website. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to ask my colleague Adeline to tell us a little bit more about the IUCN STAR metric.
Yes, so As you may know, the IUCN star matrix has been launched today at lunchtime, just there. And if some people are interested into the details on how it works, there will be another session online on Thursday at 2 p.m. BST. So we can provide the information to register on that. So the IUCN, the star matrix is based on the IUCN red list. So as you may know, when companies have impact on biodiversity, they will have to have several indicators, several measures. Some of them will be on the ecosystem, and they will also need to have things on species. And it's one of the first time that we have this opportunity to have one metric that will combine a lot of information about species, and that will have a score. So where they will be able to monitor progress through time. So how it's built, so you have several layers, the first several levels of details that you can use. The first step is a global layer that is available, and so thanks to that you can screen for risk and opportunities. So specifically here it will be an opportunity to investigate in which area to invest for the different projects. Then a second step is that you can also, when you get this first star score, you can also calculate your calibrated star. So that means you have to do some survey in the ground to check what are the species that are present, and you will be able to validate your score. So that will be something that will be done too, and that will give a score to each of the projects. Which is really nice with STAR is that you can also at some point use some of the information that you have on the ground to monitor the progress through time. So there will be again this opportunity when they select a project and they will start doing action to restore biodiversity in the area, to get a STAR score specific for the project and to monitor the progress through time. So yeah, that's, if you have any question at the end, I can provide a bit more details about STAR.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure we might get some technical questions on that. And maybe just to comment on the, so we are very excited to be able to pilot STAR as part of the impact framework of Nature Plus. It gives an opportunity, as we heard, like the first time to look at species more on a more intentional basis rather than just camera traps and counting some animals that occur in your project. And so we will intend to make it kind of compulsory for Nature Plus, but we also recognize that it's not available for all type of projects, for example, which I explained. So on the ocean side, for example, it's not yet available. So it doesn't mean that if somebody is not eligible for STAR, it's not eligible for Nature Plus. But we hope that by making it systematically a part of the process, and also not just use it as a screening initially, but use it as a KPI for our ongoing annual impact monitoring, be able to report on the progress. We hope that, yeah, it will enable for this tool to grow and offer solutions in terms of the biodiversity extinction risk. So I think that's where we look forward to collaborate with our colleagues at the Biodiversity Consultancy and ongoing work with IUCN. On the NBS standard, also just to comment on that, that's quite new as well. It's going to be quite daunting for projects, so we don't expect that projects have to know all about this and submit proposals in line with the new standards. But we aim to, again, as I mentioned, in the spirit of collaboration and co-building, ensure that the projects are aligning with that. And that will be very interesting for the investors as well of the fund, that later on hopefully can report into their requirements, for example, for the TNFD or other upcoming regulatory framework. So the idea is to work together and hope align the processes. I don't think I'm going to go into too much detail, but on the management side of it, and again, the idea is for those who listening who want to access the fund is not to put additional burden on projects. We have heard that, and some of the lessons learned from our first fund, the Untitled Climate Fund, is that for some projects it's a lot of additional burden to do all these additional reporting beyond financial and others. But at the same time, for the industry, we need to be able to demonstrate the tangible positive impact, and not just to be, with the risk of greenwashing or box ticking, but the real how we really can quantify and report it. In terms of the STAR, what is exciting is also that we just showed you the 5 impact areas and some of the main KPIs. For each individual project, typically we have 30, 40 additional KPIs. And then it's a challenge of how you aggregate it. So with STAR, the interesting thing is that you can go really drill down to the local level and use the local data, but we at the fund level will still be able to aggregate and make some sort of comparability. And then of course, over time, hopefully across different funds and investors will also be able to do the same. So we just wanted to finish off that indeed, depending on where a project enters a pipeline, so at the seed level, there will be more just the initial polygon required and an initial assessment. At the early venture, there will be already a baseline requirement, what we call the calibrated STAR, if I'm not mistaken. And over time, over the 10 years of period, we hope that there will be realized STAR scores, which we will work also together to try to monetize and to create an additional new revenue streams for these projects, because we know one of the biggest bottlenecks is also for these type of projects is the return to have a high enough return for investors and for to scale. So we have a few slides which we'll be happy to share for especially those who are interested to get access to the fund and projects who want to learn. And again, just the spirit of, so we will provide training and support to comply with all these requirements. And we will also work on the other side with the investors to make sure that whatever we come up with is not just a box ticking exercise, but it creates some positive, nature positive assets for the investors as well. So I think I will leave it there and hand back to Christina.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of information and it was all really interesting. So I think we'll have, I hope, quite a few questions from the audience. I'll use my role as moderator to get us started. And I think there might be people that are more in the investor space. There might be more project developers in the audience. If they're interested in Nature Plus, what's their next step?
So that's a very good question. So we have been working quite a long time already on the structuring, as I mentioned, and we had an ambitious target to launch the fund by first half of this year. So we are a bit delayed, but we have now commitment to close the fund at a $20 million level by the end of the year, which will also hopefully include additional junior catalytic capital. So I would say that the next step is really we'll accelerate the discussions with senior, so more traditional financial investors. So if anybody's interested, it will be the right time in the next few months to get in touch and discuss investments into the fund. And for the project side, I think given that we wanted to make things happen as fast as possible, we already have an initial pipeline. We are able to discuss, especially accelerate CPIC members to give them some advantage. So the easiest way is to get in touch with CPIC and perhaps join through the working group we are managing there, which has a monthly calendar, a monthly meeting. But we are also able to look and hopefully by the first close, we will be also able to announce the first cohort for the seed window. So it's time to, so Q4 will accelerate and feel free to get in touch if you are interested to learn more.
Yes, so it's an interesting year for us. And maybe a next question for most of you. I'm not sure in how many projects Mirova Natural Capital, IUCN and the Biodiversity Consultancy normally work together. So, and you all have, I think, each more than 15 years of experience in working in the conservation finance space. Why is this exciting? Who wants to go first?
So I guess I have the microphone, so I might start first. Just to say that this is a very exciting collaboration initiative for IUCN. First of all, from the perspective of the organization, where we have been really trying. So IUCN has been working on nature-based solutions for decades in terms of being able to inform the community and support action on the ground. Inform the community in terms of science, in terms of data, in terms of also being able to use that information to influence policies and so forth. And I would say for the past several years, we also have been consolidating our efforts to actually work with the private sector, with the private investment, in order to make sure that these efforts are going to be upscaled through these processes and through their investment as well. So Nature Plus is part of those efforts, and it's part of what we call the finance catalyst of the nature-based facility that has been launched by IUCN also yesterday. And in addition to that, personally, I'm very also excited for Nature Plus, because I truly do believe that it's very innovative and very catalytic, and that we had gone through a longer, I would say, design process, but also that process helped us to design a vehicle that's going to be truly helpful for the project developers. And that's going to be attractive for the investors, because it's going to be able to address one of the major gaps, which is a really immature pipeline, and sort of like so many good projects or potential projects who would need a little bit of effort to actually be good solutions, and that's where the innovation happens in that space, would traditionally not be able to receive this kind of funding. And also the way of how they're going to be receiving funding is very, I would say, intelligent. This is smart money. Grants are good and we need more grants, but also this actually prepares the project developers for the real world, in the sense of what they would need to be fit and sort of like be able to use sort of resources efficiently in order to scale up and so forth. So maybe I'll stop there, but just to say that there is a lot of excitement on our side, on our teams for Nature Plus.
Yeah, and Edith, you've also been working in the space for 15 years, and what do you think is interesting about Nature Plus?
So I think the timing is a good one, because we have a lot of momentum. We started working with our first flagship fund, Untitled Climate Fund, in 2012 around forest conservation, and where we had a situation where the voluntary carbon markets were very nascent. There were new methodologies to do forest conservation, REDD+ projects, and I would say we have gone through 8 years of very active work to catalyze that market. Offering carbon collateralized loans 6 years ago was very novel, and now everybody's kind of doing it. The market is booming, so we have seen that kind of already cycle what was possible in the carbon. And what we are excited is to do the same thing around additional environmental attributes or additional environmental markets, such as biodiversity, which is lagging behind, but where there is a very interesting opportunity to leapfrog. And that's what, for example, the TNFD is doing with the TCFD. And so we think that now the recognition of the climate change and biodiversity is not competing with each other, but actually can work together. This is something that Nature Plus wants to tap into. So it still remains a risky one. It's much easier nowadays to invest in carbon projects. And that's why we are excited about the public-private and the collaborative efforts. So again, this is a collaborative effort. We will work with the CPIC network, the expertise, the projects there. We're looking forward to working with the biodiversity consultancy to help implement these projects in practice, because as you heard, STAR just has been launched. It's very new, and again, couldn't be a daunting experience, but we will provide the support needed to make this happen on the ground. So in that sense, it's quite innovative and hopefully catalyst, and we are very excited to work on the same aspects what we did 5-6 years ago on carbon.
Great. And you've been working on STAR in the last few years, and why is it exciting to be also involved in Nature Plus in that area?
Yeah, for us, it's very exciting because we have been piloting STAR on several projects to help them to understand layers, trying to develop their own STAR score of a project, but more looking at potential impact. And this time it's an opportunity really to look at the opportunity. So it's the second layer of STAR, and see how we can help to restore some biodiversity. So it's really making the links between the two and have this opportunity to have some project, to find some other projects in which they could invest. So it's really interesting.
Great. That's great to hear. And maybe let's open it up now for first questions in the room. I'll bring you the microphone if you have a question. Please just raise your hand. We already have 1, 2 questions. Let's maybe collect both and then get the panel a chance to answer. If you could briefly say who you are.
Yeah. Yes, hello, I'm Jim Hallett. I'm with the Society for Ecological Restoration. And you mentioned impact assessment many times. And so I'm wondering how that assessment will actually be funded. I know the details are a little tricky, but that would be a good starting point.
Thank you. And I'll just collect the second question. If you let me pass. You'd have to speak up so that the speakers can hear you as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. I've been invited by this beautiful lady in the middle Actually, yeah, all you are beautiful, but she invited me. Okay, you know, you talked very well about all the financing field. I don't know if the investors are here or the people who are looking for the fund, either of them. But if I sit here in a room and close the door, I can write lots of proposals under any of these fields because we have many environmental issues in my country, Iran. I'm Mina from Iran, from an NGO. I'm the only member from Iran that could attend this Congress because all of other members couldn't pay the membership fee because of the problems that we are facing in Iran. And 2 years back, IUCN sent a message to us that we are not authorized anymore to work with Iran. So how we should face with these problems in Iran? These are very beautiful, the new source of funding, the new source of investment. But what about us? The environmental issues are not the priority for the government. NGOs are only considered about those, but they do not have any source of finance. Even we do not have the technical support. Yeah, I need that. I need an explanation. Thank you.
Okay, two questions. Who wants to get started?
I can start with the first one.
Sure.
So it's a very good question and very important one. I can say that in our past experience with projects, we have been working with the impact monitoring measurements, all that has been part of the budget of the project. So it's true that that there is some limitations, and coming back to the risk return profile, obviously if there was a much bigger return, then these costs can be more easily absorbed. So we do provide funding for it, but it's at the moment the way it's designed, it's for the project's budget. And again, then we have to put in perspective that obviously we don't want to destroy the return profile of the project with burdening them with too much costs. The exciting thing also with Nature Plus is that the technical assistance facility of IUCN, so we'll have some additional funding with the capacity building, with the design of these new standards. We discussed about STAR and the implementation of it. And surely this is something that we haven't been able to do with our other funds, but we will look with Nature Plus how we can provide a bespoke budget for the impact monitoring, and especially on the biodiversity side, because that's where we want to catalyze the markets and start looking at more as a potential revenue stream rather than just a cost, which is the problem. Until it's a cost, it's very hard to fund it. But as soon as we think about, which is our intention, is that for this type of positive impact outcomes, there should be a payment for performance, potential for biodiversity. First, maybe impact outcomes, hopefully over time, units or assets or credits, then suddenly it will change the game. And you know, for carbon, there is no problem to pay for the carbon baseline measurements because you have a carbon price. So this is part of the journey. And again, we'll be pragmatic and make sure that projects in the beginning of the journey are not overburdened with those costs.
Thank you. And then did you want to follow up on that question?
Yes, I do want to. And thank you, Mina, for coming. So we met earlier today, and we were talking about finance and all these opportunities for project developers to get on board, but also the issue of and Iran is a great and sort of like one of the extreme examples, like how difficult it can be to engage. And particularly for the private sector and for the finance, and sort of, you know, in terms of this is one issue that actually the Nature Plus is not going to be able to solve because we are focusing on the small and micro sort of issues that are related to project financing, but it's part of the enabling environment. And I would say that there are other examples as well of how actually the enabling environment in the country is going to be influencing or reducing the possibility of private sector coming in and helping us to upscale the solutions for nature conservation as well. So I have to say, like, I don't have an answer to a problem, but I think it's very important to raise awareness that that problem exists and then we might be losing the opportunity to preserve some of the great our natural capital that is actually being extremely degraded, and that sometimes even these very innovative and very sort of like new initiatives and are still not addressing that issue. So I'm looking forward to being able to raise awareness about that as well and potentially working on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have more questions in the room? I see one over there. I will collect maybe both again.
Thank you so much. Yes, hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Marina Antonopoulou. You cannot hear me at all?
They don't have the headset, so if you could maybe get up and speak up a bit so that our speakers can hear you.
That would be a bit of a delay.
Happy to help you with
all right. Wasn't really expecting to ask the question. All right, thank you very much. My name is Marina Antonopoulou. I'm from Greece originally, but I'm working in the United Arab Emirates as part of an NGO there. My Emirates Nature is the name of the NGO. So what I was wondering is that there are inherited risks when we, obviously with this type of projects, we've seen, for example, offsetting projects, that there's development plans later on, these projects or all the work that we've been doing in the ground, land use change might occur and might affect the impact of that project, or conservation or restoration work the same. So how do you deal with risk as part, the inherited risks of this type of projects as part of your project implementation, and especially when you talk to investors? So I mean, we've been having some conversations as well, and we're really, you cannot hear me, right?
No, yes. Yes.
That's
Sorry,
it. I'll stop here.
Yeah, but I think it's a question for you, I think.
Not only for impact, but also how do investors kind of, talk to you and how do they react?
The question is about risk and how do you manage risk, especially in the context of the environmental assets, and how do investors, how is this dealt with the investors as well?
Yeah, maybe let's get the second question as well.
Hello. So my question was, I found the idea about transforming impact assessment from a cost to a revenue stream very interesting. What could be the role of accounting in this process? And is thinking about new ways of new accounting standards, or is it something that you think about building this fund? Besides all the KPIs you talked about in the presentation. My name is Theodore Watkins. I'm a student in Paris, and I also work for an association based in France called Entrepreneur for the Planet. Thank you.
Good. Another two questions. I like how we're really engaging on very, very different aspects of what Nature Plus can bring.
Yes. So the first question, so we did not have time to talk about the other side. I think Almedina alluded to it. So what we have done in 2012 again for our first fund is we designed this into collaboration with our first cornerstone investors that typically came from the public sector, from the development finance world. So the development banks of, for example, the Netherlands, FMO, or European Investment Bank, who typically have a very rigorous standard. And so we tried to implement that and impose that on all our projects, which just give you a very concrete example, entails, for example, the IFC performance standards. So it's been very rare for carbon projects who are coming from a different perspective or angle to use IFC performance standards. And for us, that has been the basis of our risk management policy. We have done quite a comprehensive analysis of the different type of standards out in the market, a gap analysis, and IFC performance standards is just one of those, which are complemented then by our own requirements. These are always public, so you can find on the Mirova website our ESG standard. And what we basically do is we have a platform level commitment, and for each new funds, for example, for Nature Plus, this will be a bit tailor-made, and we have a commitment to use the highest available standard. For example, when it comes to agroforestry or some kind of sustainable production, we strive to use organic and fair trade. We're looking at now a project where a fair wild certification, which is quite a new one for NTFPs, is implemented. So we always look at what is available in the market, and the challenge in the past has been that there is no one single standard, so you have to kind of build your ESG policy, and we have a very rigorous management process. When a project enters our funds, I can tell you that in none of the cases it's compliant with our standard, and it's not a problem, because the idea is also that it's a process. So we typically come up with an environmental and social action plan that has a very time committed milestones that within 3 months you have to do these. If you don't have a grievance policy, if you haven't done a consultation with the communities, then you have 6 months to do it, etc. And we typically tie our financing to these milestones. And this is like a performance-based approach, which works very well. And then the projects throughout the whole life cycle comply with these standards. We have for example, strict policies on reporting of incidents. Obviously, this is very, very important and sensitive to our investors, and the type of projects we engage in sometimes are in dangerous countries. Things can happen, especially during the COVID. We have seen the deforestation going up in the Amazon, in Peru and Guatemala. We had attacks on people who manage these projects. So we need to manage this. There's a process for it, and the investors do appreciate it. It's relatively well working. And on the impact side, I think where is still a bit very diverse, and the difficulties for investors that each fund has its own KPIs, its own standard, and then we ask all the projects to have different ones. So we need a bit, I think, in the industry, some harmonization. And that is, again, why we are very enthusiastic about STAR, because it's going to give a score, at least on a global level, something comparable initially. And I think that's what we need, a bit streamlining and standardization on the impact side. And on ESG is just the continuous management of the risks. And the second question.
Was this the role of accounting in this?
The accounting. So that's a very important one. I would say that accounting is very important on more like also on a macro level, and to unlock these new markets. Again, typically, if you can't measure something or you can't account for it, you're not going to get revenue streams for it. And we have learned very painfully, losing all our natural resources, that if you don't put a price on it, then, well, no surprise that nobody takes them into account. So we're very supportive of, again, all the work of the TNFD, all the environmental accounting that is going on a country level. I think countries like Gabon putting the forests on their balance sheet is very exciting, because that suddenly changes things. So we do need to stop down accounting improvements, and typically the GDP is not the really good measure for our world. On the project level, I think it's more the standards, or more like these kind of tools like the STAR tool, the NBS tool, which is a bit more, I think, qualitative, that makes us excited, because that's how you can indeed come up with something as an asset, as a unit, and that's what you can sell to hopefully investors and monetize it. But it's a very good question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe just to highlight, or just real quick, sort of what you already have touched upon. So it's a very important topic, and I think that in terms of being able to account and sort of potentially monetize some of the ecosystem services. So we have been able to do that very easily for carbon. I mean, easily still is a sort of, it's not, maybe not the best word, but it has been much more challenging to do something similar, even though that was the holy grail, I think, of the past 20 years of trying to figure out a way of how we can account for biodiversity as well in a similar way, and how we can have a unit of measurement that's going to be comparable to that. So in that context, STAR has a lot of potential, at least for this narrow sort of looking at the biodiversity of species, to be able to give us a way of how we can compare, create units and compare the metrics between different areas of the world. So I think that's a very good start, and there's actually a lot of potential to develop that further into some sort of a framework that's going to be acceptable globally, and then that it potentially could be also used in that context. And we're going to be happy to pilot STAR as a way to showcase how this could be done at a project level, potentially even how this could be done at the fund level. But of course, there is the whole ecosystem of other stakeholders that also would need to be buying into this in order to make it sort of, I would say, globally acceptable. And I don't know, Adeline, if you wanted to add something too. All right.
Yeah, we have one question that I wanted to ask online. And the question is, will these projects be also eligible for Nature Plus if they are on private land?
Yes.
Well, that was
Yes.
a nice and short answer. Is there another question? I think we may have the chance for one more question. Two more questions. That's then maybe it. I'll start over here and then come back to you.
So my question, sorry, hi.
Yeah.
Many things to deal with. So my name is Heidi Ellard, and I am from the New England Biolabs Foundation, a US-based foundation. And my question is, how long are these projects? Like, what's the duration of the project, and what's the duration of the investment that you would be looking for?
So the duration of the project, right? That's the, and the investment, yes? Yes, one question, and the second, I'm going to the back. Sorry about that.
Okay, let me come forward. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your advice and your explanations. I'm Rhiannon, I'm from South Pole, and I am interested in understanding to what extent a project, when it's approaching the fund, what extent they need to have already quantified or sort of looked at the potential of their project on the environmental markets, and to what degree is the fund and the network itself prepared to help projects with that phase? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Very good questions.
Yes, Edith, you go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So duration. So the fund, Nature Plus Accelerator Fund, is going to be a 10-year closed-ended fund, and that's mostly from also the GEF requirement. Actually, the acceleration kind of characteristic could go as without a time limit, because I think we could do several rounds, but that can be dealt with in a structuring phase. So this is a 10-year fund. We have other funds that are 15-year. 10-year, we finding on natural capital is quite a short actually period of time. So the projects typically, yes, they will run for a longer period, but we hope that in a 10-year it's already possible to put them in place, reach the full scale. We have projects where actually the full scale of, for example, agroforestry or cacao just materializes when we're exiting. It's not a problem as long as the returns are there, for example, from carbon or some others. And the good news is that for the communities and for the project owners is that in that sense, we want to catalyze a project that might run for 30 years, but the liabilities or the restrictions or the repayments for them is 10 years. So in that sense, one of the interesting things is to think about when you measure benefit share and that is to look on the full life of the project and not just the first 10 years. It might be a bit more heavily concentrated for the investors to repay the financing, but we also analyze it in a bigger context in the 30-year. And we also have a very, on the impact side, a very important aspect of the theory of the change, that we do want to see some of the transformation, some of the impacts of but we have a holistic approach and take a quite long-term view as well. And for the second question on the environmental market side, that's a very good one. I mean, we do want projects to come with a business plan or like an idea. Definitely in the venture and early venture stage, and the whole idea is to have a feasibility or a seed stage, is that they have maybe an idea, but it's quite preliminary. We have in-house carbon technical capacity. We have great network now with support from IUCN and TBC on the biodiversity. So the idea is that we will spend more effort in these projects than we do with our other funds, where we expect to see already a preliminary, a quite good business case to be able to deal with them. So in that sense, we are quite flexible, but there has to be some kind of business idea. It cannot be like a philanthropic idea or a typical donor-driven project. There has to be some sort of either real assets, can be again any kind of commodities or fisheries, or we can look at different type of assets, and we will hopefully add value by also helping to discover the environmental assets as well.
Well, thank you so much to my three panelists. We are at the end of the hour. Any last words from either of you, or Are we ready to wrap it up?
I think we're ready to wrap it up. Just to say thank you everybody for coming, and I hope that this was helpful and informative for all of you. Also, there is obviously this is not the end of the road, so we do have other chances as well to engage. I would invite all of those who are interested in the actual funding of the fund and sort of potential capacity building or advice on pipeline development to actually reach out to CPIC network, because we do have a working group within CPIC that is specifically focused on this Nature Plus fund. So in that context, Christina is also she's a good a resource for that as a platform coordinator for CPIC. And otherwise, also, please do stay engaged. If you have any additional questions as well, like we're going to be here for a few more minutes also after the presentation. We'd love to hear from you. And that's it on my side.
Thanks. Well, then thank you everybody here and online, and look forward to engaging further and hearing more about how Nature Plus moves forward. Thank you, everyone. We're going to close the online session. Should I turn it off? Yeah. Oh yeah, the other question, unfortunately, we saw one when yes. You want to answer?
No, I do not. Maybe just say maybe the reach out to CPIC.
Sorry, I got.
Can we have a general response? If you have questions, please reach out to CPIC. Sorry, we weren't able to.
Sure, let's go.
It's French, so I don't know what to do.
Okay, discussion. Yeah. So.
For any questions, please reach out.
Yeah. Careful, it's a different keyboard. It's a French keyboard, which is.
Where is at?
So at is Control Alt